Hi, please sit down. I'm going to say a few words, and then my sister Mariana is going to say a few words. So, thank you all for coming. This is wonderful, and really want to make sure this is a joyful celebration as well. My father was very funny. He was very comedic. I think he's smiling right now. Excuse me. In the Catholic tradition, we have two kinds of saints. We have the squeaky clean, people like the little flower, lived very holy lives, and then we had people that were more squeaky, more like St. Peter that says, "Whoa, I think you got the wrong guy." And Jesus is like, "No, I know who I got." And I think my father was one of those who really honored our Lord with his life, not always visually. Like I think he would say, Jesus didn't come to bring us etiquette or good manners, but something much deeper. He came to bring us life and live life to the full, and I think my father did that. His biography is really interesting, and several family members have written really good little eulogies, and I want to just summarize a few things. He was born in 1934 in Chile. His family was a kind of royalty. His grand uncle had been president of the country in the 20s and 30s, and then that person's son was president in the 60s. And it's interesting because in this country we talk a lot about privilege. Oh, who had privilege? So my father came from tremendous privilege, and then the question becomes, but what did he do with it? And he was a very humble man, which people may not picture that. But it's really remarkable. I remember when I was graduating from college and my parents came, and the hotel they chose was just the humblest thing ever. And it really struck me then where he had come from and the simplicity of his life. And even the coffin, I was amused when I came in because it's not the beautiful mahogany, Lexus of coffins. It's the kind of coffin he would have wanted. Just total simplicity, just really great testimony. He had a very sharp intellect. I think those of you who knew him saw that. I think he was an amazing pathologist, a great gut instinct, could solve cases very intuitively. But he also had that spirit where, as a medical student, he wanted to go serve the world, and he spent a year. He left great notes about his year in a rural town in Chile where he was like a one-man Peace Corps, doing emergency C-sections and deliveries and taking care of children. And there was a Category 9 earthquake while he was there, and everybody's leaving the building, and he ran out too, but he realized people were still inside saying, "Doctor, the babies." And he ran back into this thing that was shaking, risked his life, and pulled out all these children. After that, he went back, and he thought he was going to focus on psychiatry. And he would tell really amusing stories about that. It was kind of it was a crazy time in that profession. They didn't have many answers, and they would kind of show off how crazy the patients were. And after a year, it was like, okay, I'm not doing that. But it was very fortunate because that was the year he met my mother. She was a student. He was like the TA or something like that. And so they met very providentially. And then he became a pathologist. They both studied pathology. It's very interesting. When he met my mother, she completely blew him away. I think he was quite... I have a sister that would say that my father's regard for women would be questionable, but when he met my mom, it was like absolute respect, absolute highest he could ever imagine. He knew he won the lottery with her, and he didn't waste any time. And when they came to this country, they didn't even plan to stay, but I read a funny note recently where he was writing that, oh my gosh, the risks of being in America is they're at war with Vietnam. What if I get drafted? But the politics in Chile were getting unstable, and he wrote, well, Vietnam sounds better than Allende. So he went with that and decided to come and to stay. The main thing I want to say is his testimony, his faith, is that the fact that he had 9 children is really unique. And people say, they always say, oh, but they were doctors, so of course they could afford it. But you don't see that. All the rationalization, all that counts was that he thought that was God's will, and so you do it. You just do it. My mom the same way, like another one, all right, come on in. Just this attitude towards life that's more Zen than any of these Zen people you meet today. Just complete welcome. No problem, whatever. But not because he knew how he was going to do it. He had no clue. His notes show a guy sweating. Like he was not sure how he was going to pull it off. But you read his notes, and I feel like his working of money was like Jesus with the loaves. You never see all the loaves that fed those people. You see the leftovers. But it wasn't like, oh, here, I have all these loaves. It was like somehow he just kept, and he was very generous. Like these are the things I want to imitate in him. His almsgiving was just tremendous. He was just constantly not worried. Even though like there was a human worry, he kept saying, well, it's God's problem. Like, oh, if God put me in this, God will get me out of it. And my mother the same way. Even when they lost their second son. That was really tragic. In 1972, he had an accident in October and 2 months of coma. I interviewed my father once on video, and he was just relating how traumatic it was to have his son have this head injury, and he was pleading for better care, and pleading and trying to get hospitals to do this, and just all this sweat, and it was a very painful time in his life, but did not lose his faith. I also want to note how good God was with him. Obviously, he won the lottery with my mother, and then that he was able to buy her a really nice home in Queens by the sea. She had grown up by the sea in northern Chile, and he was able to give her that, which I think was a gift from God to him. And it's not that it was affordable, it was super expensive. His parents had to help. Again, people are always like, well, but he could do that. It's like, no. He lived a life of faith, and it panned out. I would say he was kind of the Warren Buffett of heaven. That's where their investments are. They've had their focus there, and they will reap the benefits. I do like to tell a couple of his jokes. One is with the neighbor women. I think they're neighbors, and one has lost a husband, he died, and the other has a husband in Florida. And the post office confuses the postcard meant for the wife, but it goes to the widow, and it says, "Hey honey, it's really hot down here. I can't wait till you get here on Tuesday." Or something like that. I'm messing up the joke, but he always loved telling that one, like, oh, he went to the wrong house. The other one he told was the line that hopefully we hear. Our Lord said, when you die, don't expect all this praise. You'll just get a well done, good and faithful servant. And so he has one where someone shows up at the pearly gates, and Peter says, well done. And the man says, oh, thank you. He's like, no, not you. I'm telling the Satan angels that are going to lead you away. Cook him well done. I don't think we have that problem. I think we have a man who knew how to relate to God in a very delightful way. He's very trusting. God played the pipes and he danced. He wasn't one of these like, well, that's not funny, or life is serious. My father knew not to take life too seriously. And I think he's left behind a tremendous legacy for us. So thank you.